Yesterday was a little bit of a sad day in the aspect that we no longer were drafting for the upcoming NFL season. But like the phoenix rising out of the ash, that meant that the appetizer for football was on last night, and it was a terrible appetizer where the Bills just smashed the LA Rams with no remorse. Today, myself, Erik Beimfohr, are going to take a look at the exposures that we have, some of the combinations we have, and all of that using the Spike Week tool to see what kind of season we're going to have for 2022. Finally, Erik, we are doing this exposure show that we were trying to get done earlier in the week, but life happens. The NFL happens, and here we are doing it today. And there you are in mute again. It's beautiful. It's perfect.
So just an absolute shit show. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. You're a little muffled, but we can hear you.
You go ahead. I'm fixing the mic here.
All right. So today we are going to talk about some of our different exposures throughout different tournaments. DraftKings, also what we did on Underdog. And I'm pretty excited about it because there's some stuff. We did this a little bit halfway through the year, and it was such a good thing to do because I caught some stuff in my portfolio that I was like, oh, that's probably bad that I'm not doing any of that. I think the one that really stood out was CeeDee Lamb at the time. I was about close to 100 drafts in on Best Ball Mania, and I hadn't drafted CeeDee Lamb once. And it wasn't by any design for that particularly, but it's because I thought mentally he was probably going a little too high, and maybe I thought he was hoping to slip. And there was a couple other guys that I wasn't high enough on. So there's some mistakes I made this offseason that I'm going to look at correcting next year. What have you learned about your exposures throughout the year and what you want to work on next year?
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking off of what you said with CeeDee, not necessarily something I learned as a lesson or whatever for next year, but something that I learned. This was one thing where I feel like I got lucky. I mean, we'll see when the results play out. But literally last week, I did a show. We brought Pat Carrane, and I had brought Pat on, similar to what you mentioned that we did a while back, like early in the off season, and like kind of like if we're halfway through, we would call it, of like Best Ball Mania drafts or whatever, and talk through exposures and all of that, and that really helped. And so I brought Pat back last week, and we did the same thing, where we talked through, exposures, tried to see where maybe there were some gaps in our portfolio with only like 1 week left. Well, for me, which has been a blessing and a curse, I still had 40 BBMs to do at that point. And so it wasn't like that. I didn't really plan that. It just kind of happened. Mm-hmm. And so I was just mashing BBMs in the last few days before it filled. And AJ Brown, similarly to your point about CeeDee Lamb, was a player who I think I had like 10% when we did the show, which is like, it wasn't like I had 2%, but you just don't really realize until you really dig into all this stuff. And there's so many players and combinations and all that you can dig into, where I was like, I'm talking to Pat and I'm like, I love AJ Brown. I love AJ Brown. I'm really on the Eagles. And like, I take obviously lots of early wide receivers. Why do I have 10% of him and not like 20 or something like that? So I was able to rectify that. And I was messaging Pat that I was like multi-tabling BBMs and just like every second round, it was just AJ Brown, like not even thinking, just because I'm like, I got to get this exposure up. And I think we'll see it. I took him like a million times. So I think I'm way overweight on him now. But that's part of the lesson, is that last year I never did any of that. It was just like, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I don't know any sorts of combinations, little things. Obviously, we have the overlay tool, and then we'll pull up the draft IQ tool and stuff that have been super beneficial. But just being able to see, like, when I took Justin Jefferson and I get further down the board and you see either a player that you're like so on, or a player that you love, and your exposure with Justin Jefferson. Or I like to do it. We have our settings just a smidge different, you and I, on the overlay tool, but I like to do it also with my first quarterback and then my first round pick. Maybe I should do it with my second round pick too, but I really like to hone in on the first round pick and that quarterback, because those are like kind of the driving forces of the team to me, at least structurally, especially. And so I'm just constantly adapting through there, where it's like, you sold me a little bit more on Christian Kirk. I'm like, I would get to that range, and it was like I took Elijah Moore every time, or Devonta Smith every time, or whatever. Now I see, I have 0 Christian Kirk and Justin Jefferson. There's no reason I should have 0% if I still like him in this range. And so just going through that exercise, like kind of constantly reiterating that exercise of the player combinations and just massaging my exposures, and not in a way that I think people would normally do it, where they're like, I have too much of that player. Like, we'll see, you and I did not, we don't really have that approach. We have, 40% or whatever of players, but the approach of, if I like said player, why do I have 8% of this guy and 21% of the other guy, and then combinations and such.
The other thing before we start looking at these numbers for me that I need to make sure that I'm mentally aware of next year. I was on Kyle Pitts this year, and but who wasn't? So this is the problem. So every analyst is pitching Kyle Pitts throughout the offseason. And in my brain, I'm like, the casuals are going to come in. They're going to look at the one touchdown, and they're not going to draft him. So I thought in August, I was going to be able to get Kyle Pitts at a cheaper price. What I didn't equate for was, like, if you listen to any show or any podcast, Kyle Pitts' name was getting brought up in a positive light. Yeah. So he actually got driven up the board slightly in August, so it became harder to get him. And my exposure, I'm overweight, quote unquote, but like your point with AJ Brown, you were like, I was at 10% and you felt underweight at 10% on AJ Brown. I'm at 12% on Kyle Pitts, or I think I was actually at 10% on Kyle Pitts as well. And I'm like, I want to be at 20%. And I wasn't able to do that in BBM with Kyle Pitts. And that's like one of my biggest regrets. I'm like, I should have just been taking him earlier, but I tried to be too smart. It worked in other areas. There are other players that worked out on, but I need to be cognizant of the fact next year, like, okay, well, Kyle Pitts, if you listen to any of the guys that we do a lot of shows with, they were on Kyle Pitts. Matthew Berry's on Kyle Pitts. I'm guessing like the fantasy footballers were on Kyle Pitts. So everyone's on Kyle Pitts. People are gonna be like, I need to draft Kyle Pitts in these drafts. And I didn't, as I punched the table in anger, I didn't take that into account. So my Kyle Pitts exposure is not exactly where I want it to be, even though I think it's 12 or 13%. We can look at it. It feels like I'm underweight. And there's guys like that where, like, I know I want to be 20%. I want to take stands on guys. I mean, to each their own, but the people that were showing their exposures and their highest exposure is 17, 18%. I don't want to live in that world personally.
Yeah. And like you said, everybody has different strategies. I totally understand all the different approaches, but I wouldn't post them. It was like, what's the point? Like, you didn't show anything. You know what I mean? Like, you just showed that you drafted everybody. Like, you didn't show, like, one guy is 17%. Like, ooh, buddy. Like, I don't know. But again, to each, there are smart people who, just are going to draft 8% of everybody. It's not how I view this game, but I respect people that do. The point about Kyle Pitts is so true in two ways. And it brought up the other thing that I was thinking of before I rambled for too long about AJ Brown and such. Was one, I do think us working in the space is helpful to this, and I think it's one of my. I'm not an NFL scout. I'm not an expert in projections. I'm not an expert in any of that. But I think just doing what we do, you're able to put your finger on the pulse a little bit of the industry and the market, and kind of see the guys, especially having lived through it last year, right? Like, maybe if this was the first year, it'd be a little different. When we saw what happened to Brandon Ayuk and LaVisca and, all these rookies and just the wide receiver thing that happened last year. And you start to get a little bit of a smidge of Kyle Pitts last year. He's a rookie tight end last year, and he went at like a 4 or 5 turn or something like that. Spending time, whether you're me, you, or somebody just getting into this, spending time thinking about and maybe even like researching who's going to rise and who's going to fall. Like you said, you're not going to be right about everybody. I got David Bell bags from like the 13th round, because he was a guy who I thought would kind of settle in that, like Jahan Dotson-esque range or something. And I was wrong. I was totally wrong. But more often than not, I feel like when you're able to assess the market with Kyle Pitts, with Gabe, the Broncos wide receivers, Sky Moore, those kinds of situations, I feel like you can Pickens. There's people who I didn't really get Pickens right. We did our show about the big risers, and both of us were kind of just like at market at Pickens. I don't think I drafted him ever again, so I'm probably underweight him. So I wouldn't call that a win, but I could understand and foresee him rising. And so that is a big thing that's hard, because it's a soft skill. It's not a hard skill. And so that's a difficult thing, but I think it's one of the more important things. And then the other one is kind of what you said with Kyle Pitts, where you kind of felt like you made an error. I feel like I did a lot better this year of that. And if you watch the very last Best Ball Breakfast from our friend Peter Overzet that had Mike Leone on, two of the sharper guys in the whole space, Leone mentioned it. And I think he was anti this a little bit last year, where he's a quote unquote value hound, right? And stuff, but he would talk about being willing to just smash that guy for as long as that guy is a value. Saquon Barkley is the example that always comes to my brain. Mm-hmm. When Saquon Barkley was going in the 3rd round, if you start instantly diversifying and worrying about being overweight or whatever on that guy, if you're right and he's the best value, he's going to rise. You can always take less of him later when he becomes more expensive. You can never retroactively go back, and if you were right, take more of him in the 3rd round. And so that's actually kind of what I did. I don't have a shit ton of Saquon. I know some people that do, but a lot of what I did was it was the 3rd round Saquon or the 2-3 turn Saquon, as opposed to like the 1-2 turn where we're at the end of the season. So it is, when I have a take, Kyle Pitts, Saquon Barkley, or whatever, take them. MVS, you and I are both really high on MVS. When he was going super late, I just took him. When Gabe was going in the 6th round, I just took him. I didn't give a shit about if I have 100%. If I drafted all my teams, 40 of my BBM teams, and I have 100% Gabe Davis, I can never take him again if I don't want to.
Right.
But you can never go back and take more of him. So that's one of my big lessons.
100% true. And there's certain guys that I was like, you know what? I'm still in on this guy, and I want to make sure that I stay on this guy, even if he does rise up the board. So, I mean, should we just start with BBM, or do we want to look at all tournaments?
Let's look at BBM.
I think all tournaments is a little tough to look at, because some of those we were drafting, a little early. And it could just skew things. I think BBM gives us a better landscape. I did max. I have the 150.
We can look at the big field ones, BBM, and we can look at. I've already done a show where we looked at my DK stuff, but then we could even look at some specific lineups. Maybe if we want to look at the big dog, like you did a couple big dogs, right? I did a couple big dogs. I did a couple of the DK $500 and stuff like that. If we want to, because we obviously have the lineups page, we could look specifically at those too.
All right, so let's start with just some of my highest exposures. To absolutely no surprise to anybody, MVS is my top guy, and I have 51% of him. I have Dearness Johnson at 39%. A lot of that was just like mashing him 18th round. I stopped for a while when he started getting to the 16th, 15th round. Yeah. And then towards the end, I started grabbing him again in the 18th. Mahomes at 37%, Kirk at 37%. Javonte Williams is the one I'm actually really happy with at 28%. I wanted to be pretty high on him, and I built a lot of anchor teams around Javonte Williams. Then there's Garrett Wilson, 26%, Devonta Smith, 25%, Singletary at 24%, which looks good after last night, Rashad White at 21%, AJ Brown, 20%, Damian Harris, Kendrick Bourne at 20%. And those are my guys that are over 20% and over. One thing with the Spike Week tool that I found interesting is even if you have a high clip of some of these guys, right? So let's say Devonta Smith. If I put him in with Patrick Mahomes, I'm still probably, and I'm just winging this, I still probably
go over to exposure.
the
and just do it
exposure and
while
show
we're-
it.
Yeah. Yeah, might as well.
So I just said Devonta Smith, right? That's who I said, and
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So if we add those two, I guarantee that I don't have more. I'm going to be right around probably 10 teams with those two.
Mhm.
And yeah, so nailed that.
Literally 10.
And I did not practice that. But the point that I was going to make is like, and on a grand scale, even though I am so overweight on these two guys, right? I have a ton of Devonta Smith, I have a ton of Patrick Mahomes, and of my 150, I only have 10 teams with them, which is probably way more than the field. Like, there's probably most people have 2 or 3, so I have like a giant edge, but it's still not that many. Like, if you think about it, 10 isn't that much. And then you kind of look at the way it's built. You see like Kendrick Bourne, Alexander Madison are on half of those teams. To your point, like, was that ever a plan? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And then you see Cam Akers, who's a guy that I don't even have that high of, but he ended up on 4 of those 10 teams. So it shows you that how much people stick to ADP too, I think. In the aspect that like these guys were probably still all going around the same pockets, and you kind of get tied to that a little bit. So people that do have these teams probably have some of these guys that are overlapping. So I'm still able to get unique on these builds by having 10, and it's still not even that many teams overall.
And then even look further outside of the individual players, and you like you're hovering over the stacks.
Mm-hmm.
There's two, only 2 teams that you have stacked. Obviously, Kansas City's going to be on every stack, everyone, because you have Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
But outside of that, out of those 10 teams, there's 1 team you have stacked more than 3 times, and it's the Jets.
Right.
Which is, again, probably not, you weren't taking a big stand on the Jets. That's just how shit goes. You're doing 150 of these. You can't, in real time check every single player combination and stack while you're drafting. But that goes to the point of that's, you talked about lessons at the beginning. It's not necessarily a lesson where like I want to know every single fucking combination that I have, because that's impossible. But understanding this is important, because when people say I'm just going to draft, like you said, I'm just going to draft 8 to 10. We talked about the people that like your highest exposure player is 17% or whatever. That's fine. But when you start to drill down then and you say, okay, I'm a little bit risk averse and I want to be diverse across my guys, but I do want to have more of whatever, your 2 guys. Somebody wanted to have 17% of Patrick Mahomes and 17% of Devonta Smith. Well, somebody that has 30+% of both of them only has 10 combinations of those guys. You want them to be your guys, but you don't want to take too much of a stand on them. You're not going to have them together very often. And then let's say you have 5 of them. Mm-hmm. We're just rough math. You have 5 of Devonta Smith and Patrick Mahomes together. Then the next couple guys that you want to have on teams, you may not even have them at all on here. And it might be, like you said, I know you well enough to know that you weren't taking some big stand on Cam Akers. You weren't taking some big stand on let's look, even probably Brandon Ayuk, because you're not crazy on the 49ers. And you could just end up with teams on your favorite 2 players, your favorite 2 players, and you could have combinations with them that you're like, what the fuck? I don't even want this. I don't even want this. And so that's how it goes. And like that's just part of the game. You're never going to be able to like fix that, really. Not yet. Maybe maybe we'll build some advanced computer robots or whatever that help you when you draft. But generally speaking, you can't fix that. But you need to know it. And I think that's a flaw of the like I'm just going to draft 10% of everybody. It's a flaw of that method because it's not drilling down any further. Like if you're making a DFS group and you want to say I'm playing 10% of everybody on Sunday. You would still be doing like, okay, my Patrick Mahomes teams look like this. My Josh Allen teams look like this. My Cam Akers teams look like this. It wouldn't just be it wouldn't just be all totally random, 10% groups together.
Yeah. And this is probably one of my highest type combinations here. It's Devonta Smith with MVS, who I have 51% of, right?
76 teams or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's fucking insane.
And 15 of those is only with Devonta Smith, one of my other highest guys. So I'm looking at probably my highest combo is probably 15 to 18 teams. Actually, we can probably figure it out. It's MVS and Mahomes don't count
Well,
because they're
just
a
leave
stack.
MVS. Just leave MVS.
Yeah.
Don't type anybody else in. Ninth.
Oh, then we can just
go to the
look.
players. Didn't look at the players. Who's
Okay,
at the
yeah, that's a
top?
good point. So Javonte Williams makes sense at Mahomes is at 39, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Dearness
well, yeah,
Johnson
yeah.
was a high
So
clip. So yeah, these are
so
kind of
you're-
big numbers, but
Mhm.
but
But
it
outside,
falls
so
off
you-
quick.
those are your 4 highest owned players, right?
Right.
MVS, Mahomes, Dearness, and Kirk. And then we saw, and it's a big number with MVS
Yep.
specifically because you have like 77. You have 77 MVS teams. Naturally, a lot of them are going to be with Mahomes.
Right.
And so then those next couple of stands that you took, you might get a decent clip of them together, as you see, 30, 32, 39. But once you get past that, it's like you're in the teens. You're not even at 10%. You're not even at 10% of your total teams. You have combinations of these guys. You took 77 MVS teams, and you still not even 10% of your teams are with him and Kendrick Bourne or whatever.
Right. So I think that's like the point I was trying to make is just how like even taking massive stands, you don't get a ton of different combinations on a lot of your teams. So maybe your top 4, like you can see here, there's a lot of Christian Kirk MVS overlay, but 30, and in the grand scheme, 30 of 150 is still a decent amount, but that's still 120 teams that combo is not there. And I'm happy to have it on the 30, but yeah, it just shows exactly what we're talking about, right? Like, and the other point is to what you were bringing up. When I was doing my drafts, if I was quick enough, I would hop on this site. I would hop on Spike Week, and I would put in my combos, even though I knew like the percentage of the first 2. I would still put them in this little window here.
See the rest of the list.
See the rest of the list, and be like, okay, I'm going to try to be cognizant to either draft more of this guy with him, or why do I have 100% AJ Dillon when I only have 4% AJ Dillon,
right?
And I need to make sure that I don't do that again, because if you're low on a guy and it's 100% with some of your other guys, then I almost feel like that player's dead as well. Like it might as well be 0% because it's not different enough.
That is almost more of the power of this conversation than the what do my MVS teams look like. When you draft 77 teams of MVS, you're probably going to have you have stands with him, and you're definitely not going to be able to cover every base. Like that's the moral of this conversation. If you think you can cover every base in 150 teams, you are fucking sadly mistaken. You're not even going to come close. Like you're not even going to come close. I was drafting teams in BBM like my last couple of teams, and I'm like, and I'm like, I have like 16% Cooper Kupp or something like that, and I get to like the 4th round, I'm like, I don't have him. My overlay is showing me like you have 0 teams with him and Cooper Kupp. I'm like, this is my 149th team. I got 25 Cooper Kupp teams or whatever. I don't have any of this guy with Cooper Kupp, so you can't cover those bases. But what is probably more powerful, as you said, that I have seen, this actually happened with when I did the show with Pat, where I have very little Jamal Williams. Right. He ends up getting mixed in because I draft so many. I got almost to 50% 0 running back teams in BBM. So he just becomes a part of that portfolio. But I draft, he's nowhere near the top of my running back list. I'm underweight Jamal Williams. And it was AJ. We were looking at a combination, and I think it was AJ Brown and maybe Rashad White, because that's Pat's boy, Rashad White.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my AJ Brown, Rashad White teams, and I'm like, they all have Jamal Williams, 100% of my 8. And I'm like, I love AJ Brown. I love Rashad White. I just don't have a lot of them. I had like maybe 4 or something like that teams with those 2 guys, and they all had Jamal Williams. Why do they all have Jamal Williams? And then like 3 of them have Justin Fields and like Darnell Mooney. So clearly I was like, doing something stupid with that game, but it's like, I don't want that. I don't want that, but I want AJ Brown and Rashad White. And so you run into that issue where, like you said, the diversification thing happens with Jamal Williams, where like I understand diversification. I'll mix him in when he makes sense, when he's the best pick on the board or whatever. But then if you don't end up with him actually diversifying your portfolio, you're actually consolidating your portfolio with Jamal Williams onto the same combinations of players. You know what I mean? It would be like in DFS on Sunday if we played and you're like, I'm going to play 5% Mahomes, but every Mahomes team is going to have Miles Sanders and Jamar Chase. It's like you didn't diversify at all. You actually did the opposite of diversifying. You put all those guys together into the same teams. And now if Jamal Williams is great, but Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, you just dusted yourself with all of that. And so that I don't know. I don't have like the solution to this. I'm just being the shitty employee that brings the problem and not the solution. But it's a huge problem that no one ever thinks about.
So I see two good comments that I want to bring up. The first one's from Monroe. It says there are over 3 trillion combinations a team if you can make, even if you only had 5 guys, you would take at every pick. Which is that real math? I'm gonna take his word for it, but it sounds
he's got a bow tie in his and a tux in his picture. So I'm trusting that that's correct math, but that is fucking insane.
Yeah. And then GA says just blame week 17, LOL, but sort of right, because you might get funneled to certain players because you're building certain game stacks for week 17. The other thing I just brought up on my screen because we talked about it is I brought up CeeDee Lamb and I was at 0% I think it was at 0 or 1%. I think 0% at 98 drafts, if I remember correctly. And I was able to get that up to 7% and get actually, almost to the field on CeeDee Lamb, but I still didn't love CeeDee Lamb in terms of where he was going at the top of the second round. And I think he was another guy I thought might fall late in the year, and he just maintained value. And I'm okay with being right at 7-8% on this guy, but I had to do some work in order to get him back there after getting so low, and getting a lot of low end picks in the last 50 drafts is part of the reason I got him up so high, because you're not getting CeeDee Lamb if you have a top 5 pick because of where he goes in general. Like if you did, you were super lucky.
Yep.
So that was one of the ways to get him.
CeeDee feels like the guy that everybody has this take on that I do too, that like once you got past Devontae with the elite wide receivers, it was like, you tell me who's the best. CeeDee, right? There was Debo fell a little bit at the end, but there's CeeDee, Debo, AJ Brown, Tyreek, T, the Chargers, blah, blah, blah. But CeeDee was the guy who's like, okay, well, we all love CeeDee. He went at the 2-3 turn last year. Now Amari's gone. Clear breakout guy, volume projection, blah, blah, blah. Dak in a theoretically good offense, although I'm not totally sold that the Cowboys are going to be this offense that we thought, maybe they're going to be. But he just got dropped into that. And like it couldn't budge because there was no upward momentum on anybody else enough to pass.
Right.
You know what I mean? There was no way for Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts even to pass him. The running backs all there were like Mixon, Javonte, Swift, whatever. Like Saquon got up into that range, but like there just wasn't, without injuries, there just wasn't enough upward momentum on anybody else that CeeDee became, for like everyone that I know and talk to, was like, I don't really like this cost on CeeDee. If you like think of like a 5-year plan, you're like, 5 years ago, if I took this profile at the 202 or whatever, like that's nuts. That's ridiculous. But it was like, do you want some CeeDee Lamb? Yes. I don't want to have 0 CeeDee Lamb coming into this year. Like the cost is silly. If you have a guy who you would draft, like let's say in the 3rd round, and he goes in the early to mid 2nd, and you're going to say, I'm not going to draft any of him when he's a what's CeeDee 23, superstar profile, blah, blah, blah. Then like, that's silly to me. It's just then how much are you going to get? Like how much CeeDee did you have again?
I had 7%.
Yeah,
CeeDee.
so that's what you forced in 7%. I think that's a totally reasonable approach. I had Jacob Sanderson on this conversation. Reminds me of super smart guy. He was awesome on the show. We drafted a team, and we talked a lot about upside because he's very much like kind of with us on the upside type of thing. And he outlined it so perfectly that people come in and they start the season with like, I want this player or I don't want this player at the cost, right? You hop into a draft, you're like, I can't take Debo in the second round, or I can't take CeeDee in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks, and he kind of outlined it, that like you should outline all the players that are the profiles and archetypes that you want to have, generally speaking. Don't like, not necessarily don't look at ADP, but don't think about ADP. Like if I said to you, do you want to have CeeDee Lamb on some of your teams this year, not ignoring cost? You would say yes. Everyone would say yes. Same thing with Kyle Pitts, AJ Brown, whatever. These guys are guys you want to have on your teams because they're young, breakout players, etc. But then people will go in and say, well, I can't take him at that cost. And it should be, I want to have some of him. How much should I have? When should I dip my toes in to the CeeDee Lamb, thing? Like, should I have 3% or should I have 7% like Rob has, or whatever? It should be that conversation as opposed to like, oh, CeeDee Lamb in the second round, that's egregious.
Yep. And again, when I was looking at it, it was just a blinder spot, which I think we're going to have every year. It was not a stand of not liking CeeDee Lamb. It was liking everyone around him. Yep. So it was grabbing this guy or this guy or this guy and just never grabbing CeeDee.
This made me laugh. Monroe came in with the killer. We're going to have to like send Monroe a shirt or something like that for blowing my mind with the math. And he also blew Mike's mind.
Al's comment made me laugh where he said he's either really good at math or has at least attended one formal event. That's what I was laughing at earlier.
That is really good. Really quick before we kind of pivot a little bit, a couple of people had some comments / questions about the tools. David asks, any update on the in-season tracking tools that are coming? No firm update. We're still working our way through that. Can you click to the lineups tab though?
Sure.
Really quickly, just on the screen. One thing that I will kind of recommend while we're talking about this is there's this lineups page. Like there's nowhere else in the entire industry that you can go in by all your teams or by individual teams and go search for players and apply filters, sort by dates, and filter for which pick you got, right? You can
the value was fun.
Yes, like you can look at your best value teams, your worst value. Yeah, this is decreasing, right? So this is your best value teams.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can see the total ADP difference that Rob has on some of these teams, right? So you can see that's fun to see from a research perspective. But just like last night, we're all foaming at the mouth over the game. Mm-hmm. You probably, even if you don't even like Gabe like I did or whatever, you probably have some Diggs, some Gabe, some Henderson, some Cup, whatever. And so this is the place right now where you can go in and look. Like there's a search bar that says, go search my Gabriel Davis teams. Yeah. Go look up your Gabriel Davis teams and see if you want to look up. Yeah, exactly. You want to look up this. Rob has one Cup, and you can see, and then you can see like, oh, it's a Herbert team, which is kind of funny because you probably don't have a lot of,
I don't
have a lot of Herbert. Probably don't have a lot of Josh Jacobs, who's also on this team. Nope. Henderson on the team is nice. But this page is what in the very, very short term is kind of, in my opinion, the solution to like sweat, just seeing those teams. Because honestly, some of the things that we're going to build are like, we have full season projections, like week by week. We have built literally, so like every single week of the year, players will have like a points per game projection, and it'll be updated every single week. So we'll be able to kind of tell you, we'll pull in where you stand right now in your total points, where you stand in that league, maybe where you stand overall. We're figuring that out, exactly what we can and cannot share. But that, and then we'll be able to project you moving forward based on literal, it comes a lot from the Roto Grinders projections. We have full season projections. So like Gabe Davis as an example, you can search your Gabe teams. You can see how well they're doing. We'll be able to show you how well they're doing on here, and you'll have a projection forward maybe, and be able to see like, okay, this team is like 90% to advance or whatever, right? Probably no team is 90%, but we'll be showing a lot of different things like that. It's just, it takes a little time to build, but we're working through that. And then KZ asked about the opponents tab. That's not something we can share right now for anybody that was a subscriber when we did have the opponents tab. But hopefully into the future, we'll be able to work with the sites. It's just kind of the whole space is not ready for for everything that we've built, that Underdog is building, that Drafters is building. We'll get there. It's just not quite yet, but I am excited about the in-season stuff, and we're going to get there. I promise, David.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to bring up, because one of the big discrepancies I saw when I was looking at other people's exposures when they were posting them, that I seem to be completely different on, is the quarterback position, where a lot of people's highest exposures to quarterbacks were late round guys, like your Fields and your Jared Goffs. And I saw a lot of people were there, and I decided that I wanted elite QBs on most of my teams. So if you look at my exposures on quarterback, I mean, Mahomes is going to be what it's going to be. Yeah. But then it's Trevor Lawrence, who was a little bit later, but I think I said on multiple shows, he was a big cutoff for me in sort of tiers. And then it's Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, even Russell Wilson there. We were just talking about Justin Herbert, who I have at 6%. So he's a little underweight, but still close to that 8%. And I kind of did it, and this is probably not always the way you should look at things, but when we were in the Best Ball Mania finals last year, what do you remember seeing that was kind of constant on most teams? I think your team was one of the only ones that wasn't like this.
Was elite quarterback?
Was elite quarterback. It was a lot of Mahomes, a lot of
Josh Allen.
I
could probably look up I need to bookmark this. Because Hayden posted the the finals ownership or whatever.
Yeah. So just from that aspect, I'm like, I guarantee that no matter what your build is, what's going to be in the finals for the majority of the teams again this year is going to be elite quarterback teams. So for me, it was something that I was very actively taking. And I was taking most of my quarterbacks like 5th round, as you can see. I mean, you can just look at the exposures: Mahomes, Kyler, Jalen Hurts. I wasn't taking as much later in drafts because I got him a lot of the time in the 6th, 7th round to start. You kind of see the ADP difference on him, but Lamar even.
Just real quick, I'm pulling this up just so you can see. Isn't this funny? People talk about we'll maybe get to tight end too, but people talk about elite tight end, and I think some of the nuance also gets lost on the fact that there's only 5 elite tight ends, and I think we all have assumed that Dalton Schultz and Hawkinson and Goddard and stuff are not considered elite tight ends. It's know, Waller and Kittle on up. But so when there's only 5 of them, the probability that any of them that multiple of them are going to advance to the final at a high clip is so low that you end up getting this weird effect where you want the elite tight end to help you get there, but then if you get there without him or with a different elite tight end, you're actually better off, because Andrews was the elite tight end that smashed. But then if you look and you're like, George Kittle, which of course this file's not working. Let's just Control F. God damn it. The one team, right? Like basically one team in the finals has George Kittle. I mean, the same amount of there was the same amount of Tutu Atwell teams as George Kittle in the Best Ball Mania finals. But that's just kind of how the weird playoff format works. And so I always find the tight end thing, but it's fairly similar to quarterback, not the same, obviously. But to your point, right here, and quickly we see Mahomes 20%, Rodgers 19%, Allen 19%, Stafford 17%. So Stafford was, kind of one of the quote unquote value picks, if you will. It's kind of funny. Brady tanked so hard. Brady was the QB3 on the year, and he was drafted in the double-digit rounds or whatever, and he's only 4% because he tanked. He was horrible. The Bucks collapsed in the playoffs. But to your point, when you look and the 3 of the top 14 owned players are elite quarterbacks, that kind of sums it up right there for you. Burrow down the list here, Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, and so like for me, when I was looking through the teams before the final week last year, that was one of the things that stood out. Obviously, the Mark Andrews thing stood out as well, where just about all of us had Mark Andrews. Again, somehow you guys slipped through without elite
Dude.
QB, elite Mark Andrews.
Our team was in. I do just want to say I wrote an article. I never finished it. I'm still probably going to post it during the year. That team is like a unicorn.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
I still can't really figure out how.
I still don't like it. I still don't like. I still look at it. I'm like, this team is awful. How did it do what it did?
It's like we drafted Devontae Adams and Jamar Chase and James Conner and a bunch of fucking bums, literally a bunch of bums, and we navigated our way to the finals. And literally nobody had any of the players. You know, it was like no one had anyone that we had. So that was why, you know, when Penny and we had just happened to have Penny and Chase, and everything else was just like gravy.
Yeah, it's so funny looking at that team. Every time I look at it, I hate it a little bit more, and I get even more envious. I'm like, yeah, I finished 74th with a freaking Mahomes Tyreek stack, Damian Harris who goes for 2 touchdowns to start, and these guys have, you know, Josh Rennenhauser, some guy that went in the 18th round and no one's ever heard of, freaking cash in 8th place for $20K.
And a 0 RB team that our first running back was Raheem Mostert.
Yeah.
I played almost as many snaps in the NFL last year as Raheem Mostert did.
Yeah. So, like, it's funny. But the funny thing is, like, you had to take Raheem Mostert where you took him to get your rest of the team the way that it was supposed to be in order to advance. It's just so weird.
So pretty good. Monroe's on fire. I hope we fast forward a few months and I have this shitty team that wins me $20,000. Agreed. That's what we're all rooting for.
That's the goal. That's the goal, right? So that was one of the things I wanted to bring up, was just the QB position. I'm against a lot of the guys that posted their exposures, and they were showing it was like Davis Mills at you know, their top guys, and they didn't have a lot of the elite QBs. And I made it a point to grab elite QBs on most of my builds. I'm not sure what you were doing at that position.
I'm flipping over to mine really quick. This damn quarterback search is always obnoxious. So here's another one we talked about for a while now that I went nuts on, basically, to close out drafts was Marcus Mariota. And so I have a little bit of barbell-esque, but pretty similar to you. Trey Lance, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Those were my favorite elite quarterbacks. You will, see 9% Lamar, 12% Russ for me, 5% Josh Allen. But generally speaking, I was in, just like not to the same level as you with Mahomes, but I was very much in on Mahomes. Kyler was a guy who I had to stop taking because he just kept falling to the 6th round, and the 6th round was such a wasteland that I just kept taking him and taking him and taking him. And so I did it. I really like Kyler. I mean, if you can see, these are obviously my rankings from the Spike Week rankings. He's ranked 40th overall, and his ADP was 60. So you can see why I had to stop. I had to force myself to stop taking him. Whereas, Lance eventually got to a level where I think he was pretty efficiently priced by the end of the year. But the Mariota thing is just, like Monroe says, he was the one guy at the end where everyone else is doing what you said, taking the locked in starter who they just feel comfortable is going to accumulate 12 points a game or whatever. Yeah. And I don't really, I guess that is a helpful advance rate tactic. I'm not an advance rate wizard, but I also don't see why, even if Marcus Mariota loses his job, I couldn't benefit from him playing 8 to 10 games from an advance rate perspective. And then when we get to the finals, I know this is a little bit of a lazy way to view it, but if I need Davis Mills on a Patrick Mahomes team in week 16 to advance, to finish first out of whatever a 16-person group, that team was probably just done anyway. And so I was like, I'm going to take this swing on the 17th, 18th round guy who actually has upside, who runs, who has Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Cordell Patterson and whatever. And kind of really late, kind of like the AJ Brown thing, really late came around to why am I going to take Jared Goff Like I'm not going to win $2 million because of Jared Goff. I'm probably not going to win $2 million because of Marcus Mariota either. But while he's out there, if you ever do DFS projections or you just play DFS and you've ever looked at a projection, go look this week. Go look at the Jared Goff and Davis Mills projection and go look at the Marcus Mariota projection. Marcus Mariota projects for several more points every single week, even though he's on a shittier team. And I don't think he's like great by any stretch of the imagination, but just the profile that he brings to the table, it's like, I'm willing, if he gets benched, so what? Like, it's fine. I'll lose those 30 teams and I move on. But if he doesn't get benched, I have the 17th round quarterback that's better than the guys. I agree with your Lawrence kind of cutoff. It's like people were taking, like, why is Mariota worse than Daniel Jones?
Right.
Other than he could get benched, but Daniel Jones could get benched.
Absolutely.
Daniel Jones is he's terrible. So I thought after that Lawrence drop off, you got me on board to that. Was like, I'm willing to take that risk, basically.
Yeah.
So I agree with your elite quarterback thing, and I wanted to explain kind of why it was all the elite quarterbacks and then Marcus Mariota.
I came around on Mariota as well. I got 6% on him, and the other guy that I wish I had pounded a little more, because I was in on him and he was going 18th round, was Baker Mayfield. I have a weird feeling about the Panthers this year. I'm not going to say that they're going to be a top 10 offense, but top 16 seems like within a healthy range of outcomes for them. And Baker,
I didn't take him, so I'm interested.
So I'm at 7% on him, and that's just kind of, I think he could be fine as like a second late round. I was getting him 18th, 17th round. So like when I'm putting him with one of my elite QBs, that was one of the things I wish I did a little bit more. And the other one that people are bringing up in the chat is Malik Willis. I was grabbing 18th round as a third QB sometimes. I got 3% of them, so I didn't like go crazy on him, but I was mixing him in the 18th round a little bit here and there. But
do you think Dilly, is that how you say this? Dilly, that's how I would say it. From the Budweiser commercials, thinks Willis has like a 2% chance of taking over the job this year, and I definitely think it's higher than 2%.
Yeah.
But I do struggle with people are like this. If Willis gets the job, he could be a huge game changer down the stretch. And I agree with that, but it's a delicate balancing act, right? That I only get 18 picks and I actually do need the utility of all of those 18 picks. He was the one who I totally understand anybody that was like, we should be smashing him in the 18th round. I see it, but I also see the side of like, of what he's saying, that like, the Titans need to be legit bad, or Tannehill obviously needs to get hurt. And how are the Titans so bad that they're out of the playoff hunt in that division?
Well, that's a good point, because I do think they're going to be bad, but that division could be abysmal, right?
So, like, even if they're bad and they're 2 games below 500, they're in the race probably. And that it's hard. It's just that's the hard part.
That's a possible outcome. The Colts could. I mean, we're getting into hypotheticals, but the Colts could run away with that division. Jaguars, I think, are going to be the number 2 team in that division this year. I think they are going to surpass Tennessee, personally. So, like, maybe I'm going off of that blinder, and I think Malik Willis is definitely a higher than 2% chance of starting. I just think Tennessee is going to be bad, like bad. So I wasn't taking a lot of Titans overall. But I would smash, Burks is probably my most drafted Titan. But sometimes I would just grab Malik Willis in the 17th or 18th round and grab, I don't know, Westbrook Akine or Kyle Phillips or something, just to have a little backdoor Tennessee stack. If things absolutely fall apart there, then they might just want to get some run on those guys. So, like, but again, it was 3%. I'm fine with doing something like that at a 3% clip. And, what I would find a more interesting conversation is if we have situations like Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo again next year. We saw the extreme of both of those play out, where Baker does get traded to another team and becomes a starter, and Jimmy Garoppolo ends up somehow staying with San Francisco. And what we were doing with these guys before that happened, right? So when we look at it and we look at it from the Baker perspective, it's like, yeah, we should have been smashing him because obviously he was going to get traded and become a starter somewhere. But you would have said the same exact thing for Jimmy Garoppolo,
Right.
and that
Good
didn't
point.
happen. So it's like we got to really like pay attention to this stuff to see how we want to play it for the following year as well.
Got one Baker to Robbie stack. It also has Mariota. What a terrible team this is. Tua Baker, Mariota. I will say, from like a late round quarterback perspective, this is a robust team. You can tell I just went off the rails. I'm like, God damn it. I have
It's like a nursery rhyme, right?
Swift,
the Tua, the Baker, the Mariota maker, or something like that.
Jesus Christ, we need the season to start. The Sunday to get here. But we got Swift, Javonte, and ETN. Just a weird 0 RB bro yet robust start, and we're like, let's just get wild with this one and tacked on some Baker and Mariota. But your point is spot on. I just want to hit. I think we need to be careful with. It's almost become a meme at this point where people will say, Pat Thorman said it first, and it was just fuck. I love this saying. People have ruined it, but it's like skate to where the puck is going.
Mhm.
Don't look at where the puck was, and that's how I feel about the Titans. Is like, yes, they were really good last year, but like last year is not this year. You don't. Those wins last year don't get. The shit doesn't carry over. You know what I mean? It's like some people use this against Cooper Kupp, and that you look like a fucking moron when they when they tried to use that argument against Cooper Kupp last night.
Yeah.
But that is part of the point. Is Derrick Henry did this last year. The Titans did this last year. This is a new season. They're a new team. They don't have A.J. Brown. They don't have Julio Jones. They replaced him with a rookie and Robert Woods. They are worse on the offensive line. They're worse on defense. Harold Landry, I think it was, tore his ACL. So like there's a lot of more issues on the Titans than there were last year. I mean, we wouldn't have had this conversation last year. If they drafted Malik Willis last year, we wouldn't have drafted him because we didn't have this sentiment didn't exist for them last year, but it does this year. And so it's just a little bit different year to year.
Yeah, the skate to where the puck is going is such a great line, honestly. Like, I love that outlook. I hadn't heard that one, but it is kind of the way that you should be playing these things. You should be trying to get there instead of going in reverse. So, do we want to start looking at some of our DK teams? Is there anything else particularly we wanted to look at? Any combinations you wanted to see? Or do we want to check out our big dog teams real quick?
I'm going to pull up Abe, because he's my highest owned.
Okay.
We'll just do a really quick exercise of because you went through your MVS. So I have 60 total Gabe teams in BBM. Kind of funny that MVS is the highest exposure player. But you can see, so here's kind of fun. 37% of the Gabe teams are 0 running backs. 60% are elite quarterback. And here's another fun one we talked about, lessons for this year is I don't think I drafted a single 2-7-7-2 team last year. Probably not a single one, maybe on accident or something. But I drafted a lot of them this year, and it's my highest exposure roster build with Gabe, where when I'm drafting 0 running back teams or even anchor teams at times, you get to the late rounds, and like you talked about D'Ernest. Show me an 18th round pick that has more upside than D'Ernest.
Right.
Or whatever, pick your flavor of late round running back. And so I was stubborn last year on like, oh, I drafted Javonte. This has to be 2-5-9-2. And it's like, why does that 9th receiver have to, why do I have to draft Colin Johnson just because I took Javonte Williams? It's like, why D'Ernest can be in the flex and can be more valuable for me than a player there. And so that was definitely a lesson learned for me. But Gabe, I wanted to look at
just to piggyback off your point while you look this up. I think that the wide receiver position in the 18th round, as drafts went along, dried up and people got better ADP value. So you could do 18th round, because I think like Romeo Doubs was in the 18th round early, a couple other guys. But by the time ADP settled mid-July, 18th round wide receiver was a wasteland. So to your point, the RB always felt like the better pick in the 18th round over the wide receiver.
Yeah. One of my guys who's actually one of my highest owned players is Zay Jones, who I don't love Zay Jones or anything like that, but he was in the 18th round and a starting wide receiver on the Jags. You're on Trevor Lawrence and on the Jags, and he was kind of you took a stand on Kirk. I did kind of the Zay Jones thing where it was like, I don't know, the Jags could be kind of good. Zay has weekly upside in the 18th round. He's going to play every snap. He's like a really, really, really shitty version of Gabe Davis. you know, like he's going to play every snap. He's a down the field player. He's going to score some long touchdowns. And eventually
if he gets you 3 weeks, you're happy.
100%.
Right.
100%.
And that's what we got to remember. If he gets you 3 weeks, like I think Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 18th or 17th round last year got you what, 3 or 4 weeks. They just happened to be the best 3 or 4 weeks he could get you.
It was the last month. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think ADP was as sharp as it was this year, too, on that stuff, because he was talked about last year. And he
Would
never
you like to talk about Brian? I took some Brian Edwards with my Marcus Mariota teams. I know that's a small meme with you.
I took some.
Oh
my God. I have 3% Brian Edwards.
Yes. Now we're talking. I did just want to pull up just from the game last night. I was just gonna super quickly look, because I mean this is what people should do. I think with it, like, this is the fun. We've reached the season. There, you can't go back and adjust your exposures, but you can go look at Diggs just went nuts. Gabe had a good game. Cup, I can actually see if I have that. So I don't have any in Best Ball Mania 3, any Diggs. Right, so there was no chance of Diggs falling to the second with Cup and Gabe Davis, but Henderson, who looks pretty good, that's not 33%. It's only 3 total teams, but 33% of the Gabe Diggs teams have Darrell Henderson, who you feel much better about. Now
we were both big on Henderson throughout the year as well. 2
of my 9 teams have Josh Allen with those 2 guys, and so I think that's part of the fun is let's look at right when Diggs goes off, and I do have quite a bit of Diggs, 14%. I'm pretty happy with 14% Diggs. I did start evening out him and Devontae, because I was taking Diggs every time at I would take him at 6. And what did you do after those top 5? Because I was taking Diggs every time, and then I started to diversify with him and Devontae and Kelsey, and then Kelsey fell, and it was kind of a shit show after the top 5.
It was Diggs. So I have Diggs at 17%. I got Gabe Davis at 15%, which is the other Kyle Pitts guy for me, where I was on Gabe Davis. I was one guy I wasn't making fun of, but I really wish I grabbed him more earlier, because he did go to the 4th round, and I still was grabbing him there. But yeah, that late round, and it kind of hurts your soul when you start getting so many of them in a row. So I was doing Diggs, Kelsey, and then it was to me, it was time to get weird. So do I want to try to get a Swift Javonte Williams team or a CeeDee Javonte Williams team? And this is where I push back a bit on the you got to draft around ADP thing. So it's the end of the 1st round is where I thought you could skate a little past the ADP thing and try to get some unique combinations. The other spot was the 4th and 5th round. I didn't love a lot of the 4th round guys this year. So if I wanted to get some of the guys from the 5th round, comboed, whether it be Patrick Mahomes and one of the wide receivers, especially when Juju was a 5th round wide receiver, I'm okay with taking one of them in the 4th round to get that combination, right? Or say, any other thing. And last year it was the 4th round where I said at the end of the year, I was like, shit, I really wish I comboed Godwin and Cooper Kupp a little bit more, which is the easy one to point out. But even Godwin and Robert Woods at the time. So not to just be a complete, 2020 vision.
Yep.
I liked Evans was in there. DJ Moore was in there. So if I wanted to get DJ Moore, Mike Evans, you would have had to reach in the 3rd round. And I didn't love the wide receivers in the third round last year. It was like McLaurin, who was okay. It was, I'm trying to think of A-Rob, who was in the third round, who was okay. But I think you can build unique without going crazy and grabbing guys into like that are settled into that 5th round or 4th round. And you got to find the pockets. I think the 8th round was another one this year for me. It was Devonta Smith, Christian Kirk, some guys like right around there. It's like, okay, well, if I want to grab Devonta Smith in the 7th round because I got Jalen Hurts, then I'm going to do it. And then I can still get Christian Kirk in the 7th round. So like, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but I don't think that the whole, I just wanted to reiterate, like, you don't need to, just because the draft board is telling you you're supposed to take these guys. I think it's okay to scroll a little bit. Now, don't go nuts. And I had a draft get thrown out because somebody took Joe Flacco in the 3rd round the other day.
Was it Jack Settleman? Was it Jack Settleman?
It wasn't, but it might have, maybe a burner account. But yeah, so like you can get unique off of comboing some guys from the same round, and it's fine. And some of these guys settled into these rounds, so don't be scared to do that type of stuff.
Again, we're talking through exposures, but it's also ending up being kind of a lot of lessons learned, which they're part and parcel. But that is the human brain is like tied to ADP, right?
Yes.
You pull up the app, the next guys are at the top, and then like every single pick, there's probably someone that's like past ADP, and you're like, and then like you have your positional needs, you have all this stuff, right? You have rankings, and it's all seeping into your brain, and it feels, even to me, who have done, I'm not, there's people in the chat that have done more drafts than me, but relative to the average fantasy football player, I've done way, way, way more drafts, definitely more best ball drafts. It still feels awkward when I'm going to make something up. Mike Williams is on the board in the 3rd round, and I want it, but that tier is close enough. Mike Williams, Keenan, DJ Moore, Gabe, Jalen Waddle, they're all the same. Going to the 5th wide receiver available, when all those other guys are there, you feel weird.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel right scrolling down and clicking that guy. And then the next guy comes around, you're like, okay, now I'm going to get this comp right. I went down and I got Gabe there. We're just happen to have Gabe Davis teams pulled up right now. I went down and I got Gabe there. And now it comes back to me in McLaurin. It's McLaurin. And their ADPs are right next to each other. And so no one ever gets them together or whatever. I'm making up an example. I don't even know if that one's true, but you get the point, is that human nature affects, like majorly affects how teams turn out, and when there's 500,000 teams and all you have to do is this tiny little thing where, like, dude, what is the fucking difference between Keenan Allen and Jalen Waddle, or Keenan Allen and whoever, Mike Williams and Gabe Davis? Mike Williams and Gabe Davis are like the same fucking player. They're the Spider-Man GIF on different teams. Yeah. Like, it was
the point I made 2 months ago when we were arguing about this. I'm like, I can't remember who we were arguing with about it, but I'm like, literally, Gabe Davis is cheap Mike Williams. That's who he is. He's cheap Mike Williams because he's in the 4th round. So
he's a shittier version of T. Higgins, and he's cheap version Mike Williams.
Right.
He has the upside to get the 10 targets. He's done it before. Mm-hmm. He has the upside to have the game-breaking, the week-breaking game. Mike Williams has done it. Gabe Davis has done it. They're both in elite passing offenses with elite quarterbacks, same as T. Higgins, but they're not the best wide receiver on their team.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, like, but for the teams they play for, we want them because of the volume.
Exactly.
Right. It's so easy. It's so easy.
And the Gabe thing is so funny. I don't want to go into a rant about this, but there's been the thing going around about, like, he only had a 16% target share, which honing in on one single game's specific target share is fucking idiotic. There's games where Jamar Chase had a 16% target share. Jamar Chase had games where he had 4 targets last year. Yeah. Jamar Chase actually it was like a 21% target share last year. Don't quote me exactly, but you would think the fact that we're taking this dude 5th overall, some people are taking him higher, wink, wink. You would think that his target share was a lot higher. It wasn't. He didn't have some crazy target share. So that whole conversation is moronic. And Efficiency wins fantasy football, especially in half-point PPR. Score touchdowns, be on good offenses, create big plays. That's how you win. Why did when we pulled up that list from the Best Ball Mania 2 advancers, why was Deontay Johnson not on there, despite the fact that he was second in the NFL in targets? Because volume doesn't matter in half-point PPR if you're not efficient.
Right.
Deontay was the fucking example of that. He wasn't very good. He got 1 million targets, but it didn't matter. Tyler Higbee yesterday got 1 million targets. He had 11 targets. He had double the targets of Gabe, and Gabe dunked on him. I know it's a tight end versus a wide receiver, but Isaiah McKenzie dunked on Tyler Higbee. But you know why? Because efficiency wins. You can get more volume. It's very hard in a suboptimal situation to become more efficient. It really doesn't happen very often. Amon-Ra might be the only example where that happened last year. And even then, his situation wasn't that bad. The Lions were scoring points all year. They weren't the Jags.
Right.
Look at the Jags. The Jags, dudes got volume on the Jags. It didn't matter.
Right.
It didn't matter for McLaurin. It didn't matter for Deontay. It doesn't matter if you get a lot of volume if you have no paths to efficiency. And Gabe is like, if you do, I'm not a projection wizard. Create a projection. Show me one that doesn't have him as like crazy efficient. He's good. Mike Williams, crazy efficient. You know why? Because of the offenses they play for and the way they, their archetype of a player.
I just want to bring up that I have 19% Jamar Chase, since you tried to throw me under the bus there.
Hold on, I gotta go see how much Jamar Chase I have. In BBM, you have
in BBM, I have 19%.
Fuck, there's no way I'm even close to that. What do you have with Jefferson?
Jefferson, I think I ended up because of the cup flip. 11.
I have 11 Chase and 9 Jefferson in BBM. I would not have expected that because I always took Jefferson ahead of Chase. But then, like you said, he flipped Cup. So I end up getting 13% Cup. And then Chase kind of falls and I get a little overweight Chase. So it kind of worked out for me in a weird way for Chase that I didn't expect.
Right. I got 6% Jefferson, which is kind of like right where I thought I was going to get him. My last 20 drafts on BBMs were like late rounds, like I was saying, though. So everything got kind of pushed down for me. I
put you up on the screen.
Okay. And then on Cup, I have 5%.
Only 5. So were you taking to get to 19% Chase? Were you taking him 103 for a while?
I was taking him 104 for a long time, which was over Jefferson.
Yeah.
But because the Cup flip happened, and I guess just the way the drafts rattled off, I ended up getting more Jefferson than Cup, which I'm okay with. Like, it's fine to me. I know Cup went off last night, but of the three, I just wanted to get, my whole theory was just, who can I get the highest exposure to and get the most different teams of? And it was Chase. So for the reason I did it, I would have liked to try to have gotten the other guys close to the 8%, but I mean, what's 5% to 8%? What's 6% to 8% in the grand scheme of things? And the other guy I was taking when I could was McCaffrey, right? So I'm overweight on McCaffrey a little bit at 10%.
What'd you do with JT?
I got to be close to dust on him, which 3% on Jonathan Taylor. So, like, if I had the 1, I was taking McCaffrey. If I had the 2, I was taking McCaffrey.
So I pull mine up. I just pretty much just peanut butter spread it with those 5 guys. 11% JT, which was just a benefactor of getting the 101 more than the 102.
Right.
That it wasn't like I took JT when I got the 101 just because he went 101 more often. I know that became a little bit different at the very end, but I was taking JT, and then when I got the 102, I took Christian McCaffrey. When I got the 103, I took Cup, and then if Cup fell, I took him. And then you obviously see that I passed on all the shitty running backs. 1% Ekeler. How much Ekeler did you take?
You might have more than me. You might have more.
1%, and I have more than you.
I have 1%.
That's great. Oh 1%. My god, one team, one.
Yep, one Ekeler team. That's that was a stand. It was a stand on that. I was grabbing Diggs. I was grabbing other guys. I'm not I don't know. So here's the team that might kill me this year is the Chargers, because
Yeah.
I wasn't big on Herbert. I wasn't, and it's all based on where they were going in drafts. I mean, I liked Mike Williams, but I don't really love Keenan Allen. So my two highest owns are probably Mike Williams and Gerald Everett.
Take off Ekeler, and in the players section where it says search for just in the player search bar, you can type Chargers. I believe you can type either Chargers or LAC, maybe LAC. Yeah, there you go.
So Isaiah Spiller was a guy I was taking big early in drafts and kind of.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, so then it was like Gerald Everett and Mike Williams, like I said, and then like Palmer, Herbert. So they can absolutely kill me. I like that Tylan Wallace just based on the way his name is spelled. Gets mixed in with all the Chargers, but I took Parham once. I probably should have taken Parham a few more times as an 18th round.
I would have if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
I was spooked on Everett because I was really big on Everett because he was 100% the same as you. I don't think I took Keenan. If I did, it's probably like your Ekeler one or two teams that maybe auto drafted Keenan.
Yeah.
So Everett was like always my backdoor option into this offense. And I don't really think that's how you should always think about it when there's someone like Mike Williams or whatever on the team. But that was just kind of how I was processing the Chargers. Like you said, like we said a long time ago, I can't cover every base. I don't like the cost on Keenan. Honestly, the cost on Mike Williams was a little prohibitive. I didn't want Ekeler at the 106 or 105 where he got to.
Right.
So it became Gerald Everett. And then the early camp reports where the Donald Parham is like dunking on Gerald Everett. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got Isaiah Spiller bags and Gerald Everett bags.
Yeah.
Like, can one of these guys actually get on the football field? And so Parham got hurt. But I think, that's a small concern for when Parham comes back is like, we're excited for Everett right now, but like in the playoffs, is Everett going to be in every snap tight end? I don't know if he is.
Yeah, so I could get dunked on by the Chargers heavily this year, but I didn't like. We were not getting to everything I want to get to, but I didn't like Herbert where he was going. Like I just physically can't grab Herbert over Lamar, Mahomes, specifically those two guys. But I even kind of like Hurts and Kyler a little bit better than him.
Yep.
Based on upside, and it's like to get Herbert, you had to get him before those guys, and it's like, why would I take Herbert when I can take Mahomes and stack them later?
Seriously, why does Herbert go before Patrick Mahomes?
I don't,
or why did
he get it? I don't get it. I think it becomes that like, you just become a slave to the ADP, and because he was going there, people just kept grabbing him there. Or because especially with guys when their stacking partners go beforehand, you don't want to miss on that stack. So like they either had Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, and they're like, oh shit, because his ADP's here, I have to grab Justin Herbert. So it just kept staying there, right? Whereas like Mahomes, it's like, all right, well, I don't have Kelsey, but I can get, Juju before he started going before him, and then MVS or Sky Moore. Like you could get any of his stacking partners late, so you could push him down a little bit. Lamar, you're okay with like, well, even if I don't have a stacking partner with Lamar, I don't really care because it's Lamar Jackson.
He's going to run for 1,000 yards. Who gives a shit?
Hurts, if you didn't have AJ Brown, you could still get Goddard, or you could get, like all these guys, you could get somebody late. Kyler, Rondell Moore, if you wanted to build heavy at wide receiver, you had DeAndre Hopkins, but you couldn't do that with Herbert. It had to be Everett. Right? Or Joshua Palmer. But if you wanted one of his studs, they were already gone. So now you're like scared to not get that stack is what I think happened there.
I was going to mention your Kyler thing is a great example of, I don't want to say I fell into that trap because I wanted to take a lot of Kyler. Hopefully there we go. I would backdoor. I felt comfortable. Kyler runs. So if you get absolutely locked out, it's not the absolute end of the world, but then I take a lot of late round tight ends, and it was like, it's 7 of my 150 are Kyler, Trey McBride stacks, and it was like exactly what you said. I probably took actually I only have one elite tight end. I would do the opposite of elite tight end. I would do late round tight end. So there's probably some tight ends in here. Alberto, Gerald Everett, who we just talked about, Brevin Jordan, right? So I was just mismatching all the late round tight ends with Trey McBride, and I happened to have Kyler, so I knew that McBride was just ready to be on my radar. I was just gonna hit GA's comment. Obviously love Liam, respect Liam's take. I think this is the wrong way to think about week 17. Like, you don't take a guy in the first round because you think right now in September his week 17 matchup is good. That's low. We talked about this on multiple shows, and we did a kind of like a best ball 101 show where we went through kind of like almost like the decision tree or the totem pole, if you will, of how you get to the decision point on an individual player. And I don't think at the 106 or the 105 that you should say, I'm drafting this player because I think a pass catching running back against the Rams is a good matchup. Because that's a lot of overconfidence in that being true, solely because you're looking at last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the pass catching running backs we just saw last night, they caught a bunch of passes and they didn't get any yards. It was Diggs against Jalen Ramsey. Diggs cooked Jalen Ramsey. Gabe Davis cooked the Rams secondary, right? Isaiah McKenzie cooked the secondary. Josh Allen smashed. And so I think this is not how I would look at week 17 and how I'd make decisions, at least not in the first round. Maybe if you get to a point in the 12th, Isaiah Spiller or Sony Michel now, and you're like, okay, this is maybe a good matchup as the tiebreaker for me at that point. I think that makes sense. But for me personally, that's not how I would decide on my first round on my first round picks.
Yeah, you should be looking at Ekeler like, well, now we think he's going to get the majority of the workload again, so he has the potential of skyrocketing like he did last year. That's how you should be drafting Austin Ekeler if you're drafting Austin Ekeler. And to your point, yeah, it's just you're looking for the stacking partners later. If you're in the 4th round, and we're going back hindsight, we got to throw out last night's game. But if you were like sitting there looking at Allen Robinson or other wide receiver, and you were like, I like these guys both the same, you could be like, well, I do have that week 17 correlation with Allen Robinson.
And see, GA kind of counters with, couldn't Ekeler be the RB1? No. Am I crazy to say no? I don't think that he could. He scored 20 touchdowns last year. They had one of the worst defenses in the NFL, so they threw a ton. He didn't have a backup. Now they drafted Isaiah Spiller, who clearly, I guess, just sucks and is dust. But then they also brought in Sony Michel, who they're ranting about. Austin Ekeler himself, who does fantasy football podcasts, has come out and said, I don't want to get as many touches as I got last year. I want less work. I'm going to be, and that was he only got 60 to 65% of the work last year. Yeah. That was with Justin Jackson and Josh Kelly and guys who are not there anymore or who suck. So
and what touches do you think is going to get taken away from him if that's the case?
Not third downs, to be fair. So that's the pass catching thing is there, but Sony at the goal line, and and the other thing is that their offensive line got better. Their defense got way better. Like they went from a bottom 10 defense to a top 10 defense over the offseason. So if they're not forced into all these, and they, they're going to play the Chiefs and such, so they're going to have to score points. I'm not saying Austin Ekeler is a first round pick. I'm not saying that he shouldn't be a first round pick, but I'm saying in terms of his range of outcomes, it is very drastically different in terms, like, think of the skate to where the puck is going thing. You can't just look at last year he's one of the best examples to not just look at last year, because it was a very micro thing that happened with Ekeler to produce his season, and he's not in that situation anymore.
And to go to your point, to look at last year, one of the defenses that was heavily better than we thought it was going to be was the Dallas Cowboys, which really hindered their offensive performances, right? Because they didn't have to throw the ball a ton. And we were all hyped about the Dallas offense, and it just didn't have to do things. So, so like if their defense is better, the only contingent of that or caveat is they are in the AFC West, and we think a lot of those games are going to shoot out. So, but
he's a first round pick. Nobody is saying he's not a first round pick.
No,
but in terms of the legendary upright, we mentioned Pat Crane and stuff doing his legendary upside running back article. There's a lot of dings on Austin Ekeler in terms of that. Do I expect him to be bad? Of course not. He's awesome. He's on an awesome offense. He's going to have a very good season. But we're talking about the 105 or 106. We're not talking about, a pick where these flaws aren't concerns.
Right. And he's a guy that maybe we should have been drafting at the beginning of the year, but there was other concerns. And then once those concerns went away, he got shot up the board to 105, and you were like, eh.
Then they signed Sony. They signed Sony.
Yeah, we won't even get into Sony Michel. Do we want to look at our big dog teams, or do we want to look at some DK teams?
I did 2 of the $555 DK teams, and it's funny that people mentioned Malik Willis. Here I was drafting so many teams, I auto drafted my last pick in one of the DK $555 tournaments, and it was Malik Willis on, like, I already had, like, I don't know, Jalen Hurts or something like that on the team. But I'll pull that up. Here we go. The playmaker. We'll let this. Here's my 2 playmaker teams when these load. We can look at those, and then maybe look at your big dog teams or whatever you want to.
Yeah. We'll pull up the big dogs.
But I drafted them both kind of at the end. I will say, as these load, it was my plan of attack for drafting went fairly according to plan. And so that is a lesson that I feel is like kind of a check, a feather in my cap or whatever, where I was like, I'm going to max this. Hopefully these show up. I'm going to max this DK $5 and be like, there's going to be other DraftKings contests. And I can enter those at the end, particularly the higher stakes ones where I, know that they might overlay, and the level of competition is.
Do you have to
early in the off season?
Sorry.
Early in the maybe you're not supposed to have to, but we can do that. It's fine. Nope. Let's try it. Not the lobby. Okay, this isn't gonna work.
While you figure that out, if you want, I do have my big dogs teams.
We'll go to yours. I'll see if I can get mine up while you're doing that.
So I drafted 2 big dog teams. One of them was streamed with Overzet, and that team was like the Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, Leonard Fournette, Breece Hall. We had a gigantic blow-up fight about Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, Ken Walker, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Judy, MVS, of course, Burks, Hardman, Pierce, Will Fuller that he wanted, Gerald Everett, and Gesicki. So that's one of the teams. That's the team I drafted with Pete. We were on the clock, and Miles Sanders was like a round and a half past ADP, and he wanted Miles Sanders. And I'm so out on Miles Sanders this year, just based on that offense as a whole, what I like with that team. And we ended up placing a $100 bet on who would score more fantasy points.
Gainwell, right? Did you just do one? Yeah.
Underdog scoring. I took Gainwell straight up for $100 because
Underdog scoring.
Yep. I even took it on Underdog scoring. I was like, I just think Gainwell's going to outscore him for the entire year. So that's what I have. And then I had to draft again from the 11 spot. I ran, if I'm going to cry about something, between the last 2 years, anytime I drafted a big dog team, I had like the 7th slot or worse out of like 7 teams. So I did not run well, but we went Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Javonte Williams. We have Cam Akers, RIP, Kenneth Walker, Alexander Madison, Eno Benjamin, Zach Moss, D'Ernest, Hollywood, Elijah, MVS, Lazard, rest in peace. So we're pretty much dead on this team. Chase Claypool, KJ Osborne, Zay Jones, Travis Kelce, Robert Tonyan. I don't hate the team, but it's really tough to navigate when you're trying to on the bigger buy-ins. I really wanted a top 5 on one of them, to be perfectly honest, but you get what you get.
It is difficult. I will say I can't get my I'm gonna flip over. I can't get my 555s to pull up, but I got the $333 single entry, and I was just gonna say I only drafted 2 of the 555s, and I got Cup in both of them. Nice. And I took Cup 103 in the first one, And then in the second one, I had either the 104 or the 105, and Cup was there. And I thought long and hard about like, do I want to have both of these teams with Cooper Kupp, or do I, diversify with Jamar Chase or whatever? And I took Kupp on both of them because Mama didn't raise no bitch. But I was, but I thought about it, to your point about the high stakes stuff, was like, do I want to have all my eggs in one basket on one player? But so this $333 team is an example.
Put all your eggs in one cup.
Yes, exactly. Two eggs, one cup. Yeah. But this is when the team goes bad for you, and like why I was thinking about like, do I diversify? Do I do this? Because it is, I was spending about just full transparency, I was spending about 10 grand this year was my plan on best ball teams, and 1,100 or between these three teams is 1,500. That's 15% of it. Is like, I'm being a little more thoughtful about those teams. And so this 333, I get what pick? I get the 12th. I get the 12th pick. But I remember this actually. I posted in chat afterwards because I was like, God damn, because people were like waiting on the 333 in Discord, like, is it going to overlay? Should we hop in or whatever? I hop in, I get the 12th pick. Instantly pissed because the 12th pick is terrible. But Diggs and Devontae are both there at the 1-2 turn. So I get Diggs and Devontae both. Then it comes back around, and I'm not taking any of the tight ends. I just keep smashing wide receiver. Sutton, Gabe, Bateman, MVS, Sky, right? I mixed in Dylan and Pollard. I kind of took those like 6th, 7th round detours or whatever on the running backs I usually wouldn't. And I should have taken a quarterback. And I got myself locked out. I got myself locked out of quarterback and locked out of tight end. So I end up with a 0 running. And I mean, I like Dylan, Pollard, Ramondre, Carter, Zamir, McKinnon. Those are like some of my favorite 0 running back guys. But I got myself locked out of quarterback and tight end. As you can see here, I have to take a 3-6-8-3 team with Lawrence, who I stacked with Zay. Yeah, Lawrence stacked with Zay. I believe naked Davis Mills.
No other way that I want Davis Mills than naked.
I love a good naked giraffe. And and naked Carson Wentz. Oh. We paired up naked Carson Wentz and naked Davis Mills on this team, and then Gerald Everett, Jonnu, and I also remember this. I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm just gonna do a ridiculous. I like a lot of the late round tight ends, so I feel comfortable in that range where I think other people don't. McBride was gone, Bellinger was gone, like all these guys were gone. I'm like, well, Kylan Granson it is, because I had to have a tight end on this team. And so
curiosity question.
Yes.
When the 333 because the QBs went a little higher on DK, were they following in that? I mean, I know you only did one, which, was one more than I did. Were the QBs falling a little more?
So they weren't. That was the problem and I was at the turn, right? And so the turn can be great because you can scoop falling value and just get your guys, or you can get locked out, especially and that's what happened to me. I got locked out of elite tight ends. I got locked out of elite quarterbacks really fast. And so I just jumped in on Lawrence because I'm like you mentioned with some of the other guys that have late round stacking options. I know Zay's there. I know Ingram's there. I know Marvin's there. I don't really like Marvin or Ingram, but they're there. They're there for me. And so I just I'm like, I can't keep getting locked out. And so anyway, I hate this $333 down the drain, but Omar was asking to see some DK teams and stuff. And I think it's interesting to see the different dynamics like at play in a team and like walk through it and be like, no, like I'm really happy. I got Diggs and Devontae on the same team. Then I got Gabe and Sutton at the 3-4. Like I love, like it's a dream start. But then it went to shit because you can get locked out really fast on DraftKings.
If we want to go through DK exposures real quick, I do have my highest pulled up in the $5. tournament. I did not max this. I hit about 100. It's only showing 103. I only did about 10 more. I haven't synced those particular teams yet, but you're going to see a little bit of discrepancy from my underdog team because there's 2 more rounds, right? So I'm taking even more flyers on guys like Chris Evans, who I have 32%. I was grabbing him earlier in the year a lot more. Stuff like that. Julio, obviously my percentage is higher because you were getting him later. My value on him is great. Zamir White, I had a better value on. He's at 24%. I think for me, my biggest difference would be the quarterback position as we bring it up, just because they were going a lot earlier. So I just had it and it went away. How dare they?
I know the quarterback thing is tricky. Yeah.
So if we look at it, oh my God,
It fucking does that.
there it is.
Hacker, tune in and fix it. It only happens with the quarterback too.
Yeah. So you see, like Lamar, I thought was the best value on DK out of all of them.
Well,
So
Mahomes went a full round before Lamar on DK. It was very different.
Yeah, and I was grabbing some Mahomes still, but so I was grabbing a lot of Lamar. I mean, but I still have all the kind of the elite guys, right?
It's all the elite.
Right. So
Lamar, Mahomes, Russ, Kyler, Hurts, Lance.
I actually thought Kyler would be my highest because I felt like I was taking him because he was still going in the 6th round on DK. Yep. And I felt like I was pressing him a lot, but there might have just been like a run that I just grabbed Murray, like 10 straight drafts or something.
Well, you get sick of waiting for Kyle. Like, know, Kyler's there in this. This is what happened to me. He's my highest owned quarterback on DraftKings. But you're just like, am I gonna fucking take him like again? And like, if I don't take Hollywood now, I mean, I'm whatever on Rondale. I hate Ertz. Like, it's weird. It became a little bit weird, and I'm like, I have so much Hollywood and Kyler because it was so easily available. But like, I kind of wanted more of what you have here. That your spread, I would prefer that to mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was very conscious about elite QB, and I did the Baker thing a little bit more on DK, 11%. Lawrence is at 11%. Trey Lance at 13%. Must have been auto picks. Yeah,
that's a lot of fucking auto picks.
That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, I mean, even some of the other guys, Joe Burrow, I had an 8%, who I was a little lower on the other site. And then, like, you look at the guys you can take flyers on. Malik Willis, 7% on this site because we have that 19th and 20th pick. It's like, well, who are you taking in the 20th round of these drafts? Hell, I might as well take Malik Willis, right? And just even if he is a 3rd quarterback with an elite build, I'm okay with it if he's going to be a guy that comes in and puts up like a 25-point game here or there, and he might advance me in the playoffs. So, like, whatever, it's fine. But that's kind of the way I was building through there. I really was interested to see my QBs, though.
Super quick. I was going to ask about Josh Allen because you were really heavy on the elite quarterbacks, which I think was very smart. You still got to 9% Josh Allen on DraftKings, and he went even earlier on DraftKings. Was that just one of those kind of like the CeeDee Lamb thing where you're like, I can't leave my drafts without X amount of Josh Allen, and you were just forcing it, or what was your approach to him?
Yeah, I would bet if we looked, he's probably on a lot of my Diggs teams, and that's without, I could make a fool out of myself here by saying that. But let's look at it real quick.
Oh yeah,
is he? I'm not.
Oh no, did you only put Diggs in? Oh
yeah, I only put. Oh, did I not take him with Allen? That's interesting. That's an interesting thing that I did not know. Yeah, we'll check Gabe with Josh Allen. So let's look up Gabe Davis. Let's look up Josh Allen and see what we did there. So
Tyrion Davis Bryce season.
Yeah, another one. I mean, the MVS one makes sense, right? But yeah, Tyrion Davis Price doesn't make that much sense on this. So I don't know what the hell I was doing with Josh Allen on DK.
Take out Gabe, X out Gabe. We can just look at the players on the. So it's only 9 teams.
Yeah.
Knox.
So it looks like it was Knox.
Some backdoor stacks.
I bet I was trying to set up Allen Gabe a lot and just wasn't getting it as much as I wanted to. Yeah. So that's probably what it was.
4 Knox, 3 Gabe, probably a sprinkle of McKenzie or Shakir. Yep.
Yeah.
Makes
McKenzie.
sense.
Yeah. So that's probably
It
what
was
happened
hard.
there.
It was he was really hard because I don't want to have 0 of him on DraftKings, but he goes at like the 2-3 turn.
Two. Yeah.
And if you don't get him, they're not going to get him with Diggs typically. How do you figure out him and Gabe? He was really tricky actually on DraftKings. It was a little more straightforward on Underdog because it aligned a little bit better. But on DraftKings, he was tough. So I was interested when I saw 9%.
Yeah, so it must have been just taking him and hoping to set something up late. I'm shocked I don't have him with Diggs at all. That's something that I thought. But I guess like when you say he was going 2-3 turn and Diggs is going like the end of the first, it kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, and we saw why we need Allen last night. You saw exactly why you need him because of that type of game last night. Doesn't throw for 300 yards, but he's probably going to be the QB1 on the week already.
They only threw 31 times, and he didn't run for a touchdown, or he did run for a touchdown, but he didn't run for like a boatload of yards.
Yeah,
and he
hit 30 something points.
He just destroyed, and he, like you said, and on DK he didn't hit the 300-yard bonus. It was 297 yards.
Yeah,
I mean he's a cheat code. And that was a. I think the Rams defense is maybe not quite as good as it's been in the past, but it's not a bad defense.
Right.
And it was effortless.
Yep.
What did he complete the first 14 balls that he threw? So I don't have a lot of him. And after last night, it didn't feel good.
It was hard to get him though. Like in fairness, like you have that whole bunch of QBs at that 4, 5, 6 range, and he's top third, or like you said, early third, late second on DK. It's harder to click the button there. But again, I just made it a thing. Like I need to take Josh Allen some, so I would just click the button. I just clicked it and then figure it out from there.
What about as we can wrap it up with anything that you like have regrets on, or any players you've thought about that you didn't get the exposure to maybe that you wanted?
My biggest regrets is Michael Carter.
Ooh. He's the engine to the Jets offense. Did you see the report today?
Yes.
Robert Saleh. Michael Carter. That that's probably a bad sign.
So this is the DK one. If we go to my Underdog stuff, it's going to be a lot better on Carter, which I can just pull up real quick. Right? Where are we at? This might
not update it. It might not update it
yet. Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It doesn't make sense.
Just search it again.
So I got him at 8, and I have big regrets on Michael Carter, 8% just based on where he was going. I felt like I caught on to this a little bit later than I should have, but building anchor or 0 RB teams where he was going, I think is the best pick in that range and one of the best picks overall. And I didn't let myself get hip to it until the last 2 or 3 weeks. This is my biggest regret. I think Michael Carter is my biggest regret. And I might be low because I'm really big on Garrett Wilson this year, because I thought he was egregiously underpriced as well. So I think a lot of what was happening was I would already have Garrett Wilson, and I don't want to make a big bet on the Jets offense.
No.
So I wouldn't take Michael Carter, but I think this is going to be one of my biggest mistakes on the year. Do you have any that you're looking at?
I just wanted to flip over to my Michael Carter because I agree you not getting enough of him was probably one of your bigger mistakes. I have 15% of him on DraftKings. We'll see if I can flip over to Underdog really quick.
Because, Carter and Pitts are my 2 big mistakes this year.
Carter was a guy. It's also sometimes you luck box a little bit, like I did, like with Henderson. I mean, he was a big guy that I was taking a ton of, but he was also just the right kind of player for me to be taking when I'm drafting so many 0 running back teams and hero running back teams that like get to the 11th round. Like, yeah, you should take Darrell Henderson. Like he's the best pick available. And so, like I said, it was just a little bit of blind luck, I think, with what might be Daryl. I mean, it was week 1. I'm not going to get ahead of myself on Daryl Henderson, but we'll see if this little slow loading. We'll see if I can juice her up. Here we go. But yeah, 26% Michael Carter.
See, I'd much rather be at 26% than 8% with him.
But he was, and you kind of see, I was, he got up to 129 ADP, and my average is 142. So it was like he was going in those 140s, and I was just all these zero running back and hero running back teams, just Michael Carter.
Yeah.
So I feel good about that. I've been sitting here trying to think about who my regrets are, and I actually don't think it's a player. I think it's a team, and I think it's the Bucks, because so I have a lot of Rachaad White.
Yep.
And I took
oh no, that Godwin exposure is not good.
I know, but I convinced myself, if you've read any of my articles and stuff over the last few weeks, or read my tweets, or really anything, I've convinced myself that the Bucks, I'm like legit worried about the Bucks. I mean, this skill group is awesome. I don't really have anything negative to say about Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Russell Gage, Julio, even Lenny. Obviously, I like Rachaad White, but I just decided, kind of like we talked about at the very beginning, I can't cover all my bases. If I want to do it, I missed the Julio boat, so it is what it is. I missed the Julio thing. Rachaad White was the way for me to bet on the team if I'm wrong about the Bucks and something happens to Lenny, he's the league winner. And he can be okay even in the scenario in which I'm right about the Bucks as a late-ish round running back. But man, Brady's 45 now, and the offensive line he's been really lucky with the offensive line for years and years, particularly with the Bucks. They've had an elite offensive line. And he can't move anymore. And
he couldn't move 15 years ago.
Right, but he's always had the good offensive line to help him with that.
That is not correct. He did not have good O-lines in New England.
He never had this situation, and he wasn't 45. is basically what I'm saying. I'm fully admitting that I'm betting against the greatest to ever do it, and he's 100% gonna dunk on me. I'm like resigned to that fact. We're literally this fucking segment, Rob, is about our regrets. I'm telling you, I shouldn't have done this. Probably this was stupid.
Yeah,
but I convinced myself, and kind of like the Chargers thing, not necessarily really with Godwin, and obviously not with Rachaad White, but it was like, I don't like Lenny at his cost. I don't like Evans at his cost. Godwin, early in the offseason, I didn't like his cost. I started to dip my toes in to Godwin as the season went on, but it was just like, I don't know, man. I didn't really like him better than everybody at their own, ADP range. And so, yeah, when you combine that with some of the concerns, I think they're real concerns. Brady will, like I said, he's gonna mushroom stamp me by week 8 or something, but I think they're real. So it's the Bucks, not a one player, but it's definitely the Bucks for me.
I pulled my Bucks exposure up. I don't know if you want to flip over, or I can just read it off. I won off the Bucks a lot. So Rachaad White is obviously my highest exposed at 21%, but I've been grabbing Godwin the whole time. So I have 17% on Godwin, a lot because of everything you just said. So his offensive line is going to be Swiss cheese. Who was his number one receiver last time that his offense was Swiss cheese? It was Julian Edelman, right? Mm-hmm. Who was the guy that he could get it out quick to, who could get, 10, 11, 12, 187 catches in one game. And Godwin is a better version of Julian Edelman, in my opinion.
A lot better version. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, but to play the same type of role, and he's better. And then Julio, me and Corain victory lapped that for about an hour on the show one day. where we were
I
both
didn't listen
smashing
to
them.
that one. I didn't listen to that one because I didn't want to hear it with my 0%.
But I always thought he was going to Tampa. It just made the most sense to me that he would go to Tampa.
You and
So-
Hacker, I think Hacker was on that too. You guys, I was wrong. I didn't foresee that one, and big L, totally a bad. It's one of those we talked about at the top that was like, I had an assessment of Julio and the potential situations, and I didn't weigh enough this outcome. And
Yep.
it's not like Julio is like Darrell Henderson of last year, where you feel like you just have a massive edge, but you're happy. You're very, very, very happy with 18th round Julio, and that was bad. That was a mistake.
And I don't hate Evans. I'm not like the biggest fanboy for Mike Evans. I've made fun of him not being able to stay healthy for more than 3 seconds in his life. But I think Mike Evans was a great example of me using the ownership tool from us, where I would look and I would see 0% or a low percentage or something, and I would start grabbing him with some of my first round picks to make sure that I had a Mike Evans, Jamar Chase combo or a Mike Evans X combo, just to make sure I had it. So, because I'm not against him, I didn't love him, and I ended up getting a little overweight on him at 11%, but like whatever, that's fine. And yeah, I was never on Russell Gage, so there's that.
We are definitely going to battle with we're so aligned on so many of these players, and then literally this last segment where it was like Michael Carter is a huge stand I took, and a guy you didn't take, and the Bucks were like it's not a big stand you took, but you're in on all these guys, and I didn't, and so we will find out in a few months.
But you have my 2 regrets is the thing. You have Pitts and you have Carter. So like I am quite jealous on that front. I'll be apt to make sure I don't make that mistake, especially with a high profile guy like Pitts next year.
Yeah, he's a great example of just like the Bucks thing is a little different. Like I regret the Bucks just general overall situation where it's like if I'm wrong, I'm making a bet on a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I think scenario-based drafting is the key. But also if I'm wrong, I'm like not buried, but like I could be buried by this particular scenario. And it didn't require that big of a stand. I can still take Chris Godwin. I can still take, I could have taken Julio Jones in the 18th round. I could have sprinkled some Mike Evans or whatever. It didn't require that big of a stand versus I think your Kyle Pitts premise was reasonable. You just read the room wrong. You know what I mean? You just and that happens. I mentioned the David Bell was one of the first articles I wrote this entire year was like David Bell's a smash, and he was going in like 13th round, and now he's available in the 18th round.
Yeah, I mean that's the things that, and I'm cognizant of the fact of carrying those over, right? So the Pitts thing is probably the big thing that I'll carry over for next year. Last year it was don't be scared to take 2 guys from a later round. This year it's the Pitts thing. I don't know what next year will be, but when we have these tools available to us, it helps me correct some of those mistakes as we go forward. And to be honest, the tools were great this year. Imagine what they're going to be in 9 months, right?
I know.
When we start doing this again.
We had such a limited amount of time to even build them. I'm so happy with how it all turned out, but just really, I'm not trying to wish away this season. Because hopefully we'll win millions of dollars and buy an island or something in January. But next year, like, man, if anybody enjoyed this at all, which I did, obviously I'm biased, but man, the amount of upgrades we can do in 6 to 8 months to get ready for next year is just going to be nuts. So only the beginning. We learned a lot of lessons. We talked about all these different lessons that we learned today, and I think we'll be able to put them into practice, obviously just through the human element of drafting, but through some of the things that we'll build here at Spike Week.
And I can't wait for the mid-season best ball tournaments to open up in 6 to 8 weeks, and then we look at them all the ADP there, and our brains are absolutely fried.
One prediction: who's the guy going, you know, in the 15th round or whatever, that at the mid-season in-season best ball tournament we're taking in the whatever 4th or 5th or something like that.
I mean, I have to say Dearness Johnson, right? Like that's that's what I have to say.
The Rams already sniffing around on Dearness. They got, I mean, Cam Akers is just dust, right? Is it over? Is it over for Cam?
Dearness, or do you think I feel like they'd be trying to get Hunt.
Dearness will be cheaper, and they've traded so many goddamn picks that I feel like they would want a little bit of a discount on a fairly similar player, but they also shouldn't trade for a running back. I don't think anyone can run behind that offensive line. But Akers, there were also some clips coming out with Akers that like one of the times Stafford got sacked, defensive tackle just destroyed the left guard, and Akers made a full-fledged business decision to not it was like they slow-moed it down, and he steps up, right? He sees the defensive tackle coming free. He went to his instinct was, okay, I gotta block this guy. He backpedaled. He was like, nope, not doing that. And then he puts his hands up like, I'm open. Like, motherfucker, you should have blocked that. Your quarterback just died. Don't put your hands up like you're open. Like, you're gonna see it on film. But
perhaps one of the reasons we didn't see him in the game again.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, you mentioned a guy that you were kind of heavy on. Garrett Wilson is a guy who I think we could really just see. Like, has there ever been a top 10 pick, a top 10 wide receiver pick, right? I'm not comparing him to Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase only won a handful of picks before Garrett Wilson did. And Garrett Wilson has just been buried in fantasy drafts. If he just has to be better than Braxton Berrios and Corey Davis, and he could come out and flash. Maybe Flacco's better for him. Maybe they go to Mike White. Maybe Zach Wilson comes back and he is a little bit better. I don't know, but we just have this scenario where there's a 10th overall pick, and he doesn't need to do that much to skyrocket up these draft boards. So I'm very interested to see where Garrett Wilson goes when we get 8 weeks down the road.
To your point, everybody is on Elijah Moore this week for DFS. You might secure some bags if you play Garrett Wilson instead of Elijah Moore. Just saying. It's something I'm flirting with. I'm trying to figure out my lineup, what I'm doing. I'm doing the $200 single entry on DK, but I don't know what else I'm going to be firing. I want to do some MME, but I don't know exactly what yet. So
yeah, if you did you max the DK Millie, or did we say no? So they gave tickets to the DFS. Yeah. So that's what I've been playing around with my. I'm gonna lock MVS. I just wanted to get that out there. I'm definitely gonna lock MVS. I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna lock Mahomes, but it's probably gonna be Mahomes and Lamar is my way to attack this. We're gonna Rashad Bateman at 5,200 is the dude's never gonna be this cheap again. So we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some fun on Sunday.
I'll see you at the top of the leaderboard then, because that Mahomes MVS stack might be a little overweight on that this week.
I told you I'm locking 100%. We'll see you at the top of the Millie Sweat with Mahomes. Anything else? Tuesday we'll be back on a regular. I apologize to everyone for the fucked up schedule that it has been for the last week, but that's totally my fault. We'll get back onto a regular schedule. We're also going to be doing in-season drafts shortly, battle royale drafts. Rob mentioned the other in-season drafts. We're going to be right back into it with drafting never stops, apparently. But we'll get back to normal Tuesdays with the show.
Are you a little sad it's over, or are you a little happy?
I felt, dude, I got I had to draft battle royale teams this morning, so I have a routine every morning. Like I get up, you know, I have some work I have to do every single morning. I'm walking the dogs, I'm feeding the dogs, I'm doing all that, and there's drafting going on when that's happening, and I couldn't. There's nothing I could do, so we did some battle royale drafts today. So that did make me more interested in the battle royale stuff. It's kind of crazy. I don't know if you've done any yet, but
so my
fun.
routine is I wake up at 3:45 in the morning because I have to be to work at 5. And as soon as I get to my desk, what I was doing was one of the $5 DK drafts. Like at 5 in the morning was usually when I did my DK draft. And I was so relieved today. I was firing puppies this week, but I was so relieved today when I sat at my desk and I was like, I kind of don't even have to do a draft. And I immediately fired one of the battle royale drafts right away. And I'm like, I'm just a fucking degenerate, and this is just what's going to happen.
I went for I go for a walk, and I also take the dogs for I went for a personal walk this morning, and I come back and I hadn't finished the last battle royale draft that I was doing. And I come back, set the phone down on the in the kitchen. Wife comes in to talk to me or whatever, and she sees my phone. It's got the draft up or whatever, and she's like, "Isn't best balls like aren't they closed? Is there no more drafts?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, this is the I'm trying to explain to her what battle royale is." And it's like basically your response to yourself was her response to me. She's just like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you just drafted like how many teams over the last months, and it's 12 hours later, and you can't stop drafting."
Yeah, and you're going to be setting these 150 to 300 teams for Sunday, and yet here I have to do a battle royale. So yeah, there we are. That's what we do at Spike Week. We still keep drafting, even though I was so excited. I was fatigued, and clearly I'm not, because I'm still drafting. So
exactly.
For myself, for Erik Beimfohr, that was a fun exposure store, whatever. Things we talked for a long time. Anyways, we will catch you Tuesday at 6 p.m. Until next time, peace.